Why, hello there. It is 110 days until Shadow of the Erdtree comes out, and this is the Elden Wait countdown, where every day I talk about the upcoming DLC to make the wait just a little bit shorter. If you'd like to...
Liar.
Wait, what? Who's that?
I am the soul of comments, the embodiment of all YouTube comments, and you are a liar. Day 110? Well, it's actually day 109, and even that's late.
Hey, look, I'm sorry,
You're clearly trying to trick us and milk Elden Ring for content so you can make that crazy YouTuber money.
Whoa, let's hold on.
Well, actually...
I can see that you're upset. One moment, please. Yes, I missed the other day, and yes, I've been releasing the videos technically one day behind in my time zone. That's why I say at the time of recording to avoid... You know what? It doesn't matter. To make up for this, I'll combine day 110 and 109 into an extra long episode, picking apart the Shadow of the Erdtree trailer, and I'll do some sort of meta skit at the beginning. What do you say?
Body is better, but I guess that's fine.
Okay, great. And I'll try not to miss any more days. Doing this series is a really zen and fun part of my day, and I brought it back not just because I know others enjoy it as part of their daily routine, but I do too.
Same. And people should subscribe to Lore Hunter.
Hey, that's my line.
Turn notifications on if they want to make sure they don't miss any videos as they come out. Let's get into it.
Alright, let's get into it. Last time we left off here with our boy Messy. And before we continue to play the trailer, I wanted to go back to another section where I got a really good comment. And this comment says, the lava pipe with the spinner, probably similar to a grain auger. The rotation of the auger in the tube, sort of like a long flexible drill bit, will pull lava up the tube to deposit elsewhere. And this is the exact sort of comment that I was hoping for because, yeah, I think that's a really good explanation, and as far as I can tell, that makes a lot of sense. So, thank you for that comment. I think that certainly helps at least give a pretty good idea of what that could be. I mean, that makes sense to me. Not exactly sure why they're depositing lava elsewhere, but, you know, that's for us to find out when we play the DLC. And with that, let's continue playing the trailer.
Bereft of light.
Okay, so we got these dudes in this next shot here. I talked about these guys in a previous video briefly about the most huggable monsters in the Shadow of the Erdtree trailer. And it's worth noting here that this looks similar to the candle tree symbol that was on the candle tree shield. And, you know, they're literally, it's kind of a candle tree. In this case, they're using it to breathe fire. So it's, these enemies look really interesting. They have a sort of ashy, gray sort of skin tone, so I don't know if they are, it looks similar, a little bit similar to me, like Omen and stuff, so I'm not exactly sure what these dudes are. They have horns on their head. You don't really get a good shot, but I've actually seen a pretty decent theory that maybe these are the nightmares that the Omen have, that are what the Omen killers are based on. And I think that's a pretty fun theory, actually, is that these are these nightmare creatures that the Omen fear, that the Omen killers base themselves on. And I'll let this play just a little longer. It's a quick scene, then we can just go back through it to see if there's any other details to pick out. That's about the end of the scene, so just keep it from transitioning, but let's see here. See like coffins and stuff in the background. This is like a cemetery or a graveyard setting, although that's like half of the lands between anyways. You can see clearly here these horns, and let's see if we can get a good shot to zoom in on. Looks like there's at least 3 of them that you're fighting. I didn't actually realize that before. There's another one standing in the background, it looks like. I think this is maybe the best shot we get of their face. I mean, maybe there's a better one out there, but as far as I can tell, I'm not going to see it very clearly, but maybe that's like an eye or something, but it's hard to tell. They definitely have a lot of horns and stuff, but I don't think there's too much. Let me know if you glean anything else from this scene. I feel like there's something to pick out, but hard to tell. So we got this dude who looks kind of like phantom-y or something, you know, like ghostly, rushing at you. I noticed that these, whatever this is, like sculpture, water feature, I'm not exactly sure what it is, but that, you know, it has a similar sort of like, it looks like coiling like a snake, and it's kind of similar to the Solomonic column, so there's just a bit of you know, a through line there potentially. An interesting thing to note that I saw is you have this again cloth, which maybe looks like it come from the Balkan or something, just resting on this building, which is really interesting. And then let's take a look, just zoom in. More so for the background. So in the background here you can see the Balkans, and you have these kind of interesting towers in the background. It looks like at least a couple of them. Let's see, the architecture there is looking like Romanesque. You can see what there with the, you have this dome looks to be, and another dome. You know, it's very sort of Roman, which is reminiscent to me a bit of like Lanedale. I'm not really sure what this is. It's really interesting looking though. And there's maybe like something on it. It's really foggy looking back there, but it seems to be a big built up portion. And again, you can see even more like something draping these buildings, maybe the Balkan draping these buildings, which is interesting. This road's all torn up. It's not in great shape. And I feel like you can almost see like scales. Like it looks very serpentine to me. You know, in this area, this haze, this fog, it is kind of, you know, it's got a little bit of that purplish hue to it. I wonder, because I was thinking, and one thing you don't really see, like we see evidence of St. Trina, but we've only talked about Mikola with the marketing and stuff, so it's interesting that she's remaining kind of elusive, but clearly St. Trina's presence is here, and I do kind of wonder if this fog is not a bit more of that. Maybe even St. Trina's had an influence here, you know, it's a little dreamy. Who knows? I don't know exactly, but that combined with this enemy who's kind of ghostly kind of makes me wonder what exactly is happening here. Play through this next quick scene. I think I would like to play through the scenes and then we can go back through them to take a look. Alright. So this looks like some sort of sleep spell. I think this person's wearing a similar attire to, originally I thought it was the traveling attire, but I think it's the stuff that, Roderica's wearing, so indicative of some like foreign royalty or something like that sent out, sort of spurned foreign royalty. You see the butterflies here. This seems to be some sort of sleep spell. There's a few details in this scene that are worth picking out. One is you can see here, this looks like the lion dance sort of enemy, but like as a statue. And probably, you know, not meant to depict a costume, but an actual, like, lion with the sort of omen horns. And in that sense, you know, I think it's worth noting here that it's in this place, which, as was said in some item descriptions, at one point, like, omen, misbegotten, like, signs of the crucible were not something that was indicative of something bad, but something that was sort of worshipped as being divine. And I think that's a little bit, if they're making statues of it, I think that's a level of respect or worship for that. And so there's these steps going up to this lion, these lion statues flanking what looks to be a tree, which I think we'll get a better look at in a moment. You got some more of these weeping willow bog looking trees. Again, very briefly here, I think you see some more of these towers, and they also look like they have like something wrapping around, like a lot of very serpentine imagery, which makes sense with Messmer. Yeah, so you see these two crucible lions, I guess I'll call them crucible lion statues. This lady's casting this big sort of AoE, looks like sleep spell. And so this is that tree coming out. And the interesting thing here, so this tree, it's been mentioned, I've seen it in a few places, and I sort of thought the same thing, is like, this is very almost two fingers looking. Like, obviously, like, it's a tree here, but this base, how they're sort of interwrapping and leaning over, and the fact that there's these, like, two trees sort of intertwining and, like, leaning out, that sort of reminds me a bit of the Shadow of the Erdtree, where we're also seeing these two trees kind of wrapped around one another. And you sort of have something here where there's these two trees sort of branching off of this central core, and it looks like it's being twisted around each other. And I would say this is similar architecture to what we saw in the last shot, so this is in a similar location, I would argue. You have the towers, you have the similar, looks like dome structure, sort of Roman architecture. So I think that's indicative of that. And as we said, Roman may be a bit older than compared to some of the more Gothic components. It's really interesting. Alright. I think this shot's super short, but we'll still play it because it's also badass as hell. Hell yeah. So we see ourselves some kicks, some punches, some unarmed attacks. Okay. So we have this guy who looks to be some sort of elite knight getting swacked. And you see a boss door in the background, and I'm unsure if this is going into a boss room or if this is a boss that's being fought. I'm almost inclined to say that that's the boss room and this guy's outside of it, but it's just because otherwise it looks kind of like a, you know, like a more elite knight guys who wouldn't usually be a boss in his own right, but could be part of a boss fight. We don't have much. It's a pretty close-up shot. But, yeah, some awesome kicks. Oh, looks very cool. Alright, let's see what we can... if there's anything we can pick out here. So, almost on his gauntlets, almost gives me some of those, like, the Crucible Knight texture vibes. Might be off base on that. I might just be seeing Crucible because I'm looking for it. Can't quite make out this banner in the background, but it looks like it's like a circle with a line through it. Kind of hard to tell. And it's interesting here. Let's frame to get a better idea. It almost looks like some sort of ethereal building back there. I'm not sure. Let's make it. Let's quickly do like normal sized again. Let's watch this. Yeah, you're getting some sort of ethereal looking thing going on there. You see this rack here with all these spears, which we've sort of seen in some concept art, which I guess we can zoom in on in the one shot in the trailer where those were pulled from. Otherwise, this is also Romanesque looking architecture, you know, very castle architecture. But you have a slight point, but that's not like a Gothic pointed. That's still sort of in that Romanesque zone, I think. So let's see here. This player's holding a big old bomb something. You see this evidence of wherever we are that's sort of been barricaded, like you see this sort of in like battlefield stuff like on Altus, you know, and into Weeping Peninsula where they're using these to try to keep like cavalry out and stuff. Some buildings that we've seen previously. The background there, pretty moody sky, which looks neat.
I presume you.
So So we have ourselves an entrance to something seemingly leading this way. Where we're coming from. Throwing a big jar. It's a big old jar. So this is interesting. Just taking a look at the structure over to the right. So we see the Erdtree and stuff behind there. The main shot. So we've sort of seen ourselves looking from like the other direction before, but we don't get any views looking this way. And this is a big looking structure over here. And let's see. Can't tell. I don't think these are the Solomonic columns that we've discussed a whole bunch, but there's a big structure over here.
I presume you too.
This dude looks awesome. I really like this.
Keen to know.
Okay. And I also like the quote, he's saying, like, I presume you two are keen to know what kind Mikola is doing here. And the answer is yes, I'm also keen to know what kind Mikola is doing here. 3, 4, 5, 6. See one of them fallen. 7, 8. Is it 8 shots? Because that's nuts. It looks cool as hell, though. And he's reloading for more.
Just what kind Mikola is doing.
Alright. Crucible bear action. Crucible bear. And, you know, you see this, like, red fur, and there's, like, a horn on this bear. And rune bears are already interesting because they kind of had draconic eyes. So this is like in the form of a dragon incantation, but it's a bear, which just, you know, increases that sort of connection. Alright, and this shot is really interesting. You have all these blue flowers, this particle effect kind of gives me like Liurnia vibes with some of the magical stuff. And I think you see these flowers around some of those like wizard towers. And some interesting details. To me, it looks like a tombstone made up of smaller tombstones, which is very Dark Souls of it. And these look very much like boats to me. And this, I've seen some people mention it, and my first thought also was about the Newmen and how they sort of came to the lands between. And perhaps this is tying into that. I believe that there's a maybe it's in the Eternal Cities where they have sort of a tablet that shows like some boats arriving, and I think it's supposed to be related to the Newman potentially. So you see it here, and I think we see it from this boat from a different angle over here. So there's a number of boats in this shot that are sort of just crashed here. And if this is where Marika first set foot, I mean, she is Newman, so this plane is giving me extra editing work. Stop it, plane. Jesus Christ. In this shot, you can see another, looks to be shipwreck off to the left here. This shot, we're seeing the player fighting an NPC or enemy, and they definitely are moving like sort of, we've seen the blue dancer. This also seems to be like a red dancer. And you can see here this headstone looks similar to what we see Weeping Peninsula in the fight with the Leonine Misbegotten, which just with seeing some of that line imagery, and then you have the Leonine Misbegotten. We're seeing all the Crucible stuff. It's just interesting to note. Let's go back here before we get over to Mr. Boar. So we don't have too much context. If I was to guess, I would almost put this area over at like the right hand side of the map, just for, we see some sort of, seems like a very rocky terrain, and we see an area that looks like it's made up of almost like Volcano Manor-esque, like rocky terrain later that I'll point out. It's giving sort of cool vibes. You got all these like evergreens too. Next we have this Boar Knight guy. Alright, let's go back to that dude. As mentioned, I think very huggable looking. And this looks really close to the Shadow of the Erdtree based off of this background here. One of the closer shots to the Shadow of the Erdtree that I think we've seen. And so you have this guy. This looks like some gravity magic to me. You got this boar. This knight who's in this interesting sort of seat. Like, you can't see their legs that I can tell. It's like they're sitting in a little seat on it. I really like the boar. I think that's very fun. Mixing up our knight varieties, I bet has a pretty brutal charge attack. You're sort of getting like more like autumnal vibes from this zone, with the color of the grass here, and the lighting is all giving more autumnal than the last area, which felt very wintry. What is this? This almost looks like one of these, let me zoom in. Almost looks like one of those sensors that we see from Altus. Maybe not, but one of those like sensor shots that gets fired. We got our hippo. You can see the moon in the background there. Water. I love it. I don't think we got too many more frames of this shot, yeah. This is a good area of quick shots of some really cool enemies. See this sort of crucible magic? It makes some crucible sound. And we actually see a screenshot of the player using this same incantation. But yeah, that's wicked cool. This hippo porcupining out. That's crucible to me, baby. This seems like another really fun enemy. And I like that it's that FromSoft thing where it's like a little goofy too, but in the best way. I mean, just look at this guy. It's got a real dork energy. It's got a little horn, got a big like hippo mouth thing going on. Looks a little furry. Interesting critter. The landscape's pretty rocky. This may be like down lower on the map, maybe. This enemy. Let's watch it first.
So
We'll get to you. So this area is looking like an underground area to me, which is also exciting because with the typical Elden Ring map, when you're talking about like the size of Limgrave, I don't really think that's even including underground stuff, which is exciting. And I feel like maybe you're seeing some Trina lilies, and you got that general purple haze, which gives me some more Saint Trina vibes. This weapon is really crazy. This is awesome. It's like a boomerang. It's a boomerang that's like made out of like a spinal column or something. This goopy horse who's like gives me some like mimic vibes, but also maybe some like Clayman vibes, and then this skeletal figure that's being, it looks like there's this parasite that's coming like out of the head area, and it's got these little eyes. And I also can't tell if that's like mimic tear or what, like what this seems like something is taking over this skeletal creature. And of course, this continues from his tradition of really sad horses. Like, this horse is just in bad shape. Like, look at the skin. It's all being torn. Like, it just looks bad. And you also don't really even see, like, legs on this skeletal figure. It's like, I can't tell if this thing's, like, coming out of the horse or what exactly is happening. It all seems to go back to the central gloopy mass. Yeah. A really cool enemy, though. I want to find out more about what's going on here with all that stuff. That's sick.
Those.
And then, of course, this is like one of the most disturbing shots maybe that From has ever committed to a trailer. And so you see this is sort of glowing. Again, the sort of candle tree looking thing, the shape again. And this is the guy we talked about earlier. You can tell because of similar like medallion and garb. Except for he's in horrible shape. And he has this going through his head. And he's sort of like, it looks like he's kneeling, probably. And it's like coming out of his chest. In a similar area where you have the trolls, too. Where they're like, they have their rib cage, but then their stomach. So you got a similar thing going on there. I don't know if there's a connection with that at all, but that's looking bad for him. It's horrible. We can frame through it if you really want to see that neck. You really want to see that neck struggle. Oh, you start to see some blood coming out. Oh, like, man, they cut this shot. Like, I wonder what's the full shot looking like. Ugh. It's not having a good time though. But this guy is with whoever that pregnant lady is, and it raises a lot of questions. Very curious about this guy. I think that this will be a boss of some sorts, not sure. Right, and then we're back at Messmer, and I think this is actually bringing us toward the end of the trailer proper.
Of gold shadow meet death in the embrace of Messmer's flame.
Come now, touch the withered arm and travel to the realm of shadow. I will not be far behind. May we meet again.
Touch the withered arm, Mikla's arm, travel to the realm of shadow. The Shadowlands. I don't know who that character is talking, doesn't sound like someone we know. So I don't know who that character is, but seems like someone out in the regular lands between, talking maybe at Moog's Arena, telling you like to go to the DLC. I don't know if that's in Moog's Arena. Maybe that's the person we saw in that first shot of the trailer. Maybe it's someone who's sort of like leading you, nudging you to go towards Moog's Arena. Maybe in Mogwin Palace. Not sure. Because they can pull this dialogue from wherever. Sometimes there's an association, sometimes they pulled the line from somewhere totally different. Let's see. Then there's just a few things. So we get to see more of Messmer's arena this way. Huge fire attack. And I'm curious to see the weapons that'll pop up here. Brutal. So these weapons look very similar to what we see that has impaled the giant. So if we're talking about Messmer the Impaler, these weapons do look very similar to what impales the giants. This design. Let's see if I can pull something up quickly as a comparison. Alright, so we can see here that this weapon, it looks similar. I think there's some similarities here between what we see here with these and that. Like you can get a similar shape to what that is, and just the I don't know, this does sort of evoke to me Messmer's weapon and what we sort of see here, so I think it's worth noting at the very least.
Come Come now.
And this is, so this pointed out on Twitter that this is like a dueling shield. It's a new weapon type for Elden Ring and seems really cool. A more offensively focused shield. Get a little scan around Messmer's arena. Messmer's a big boy. He's a big boy. You see that shot from... Oh, you briefly see the shot from the beginning. You see the statue back there. It does look to be like a baldachin around it. Lots of baldachin imagery. Let's see. It looks like you can see... let me zoom in. Looks like you can see right here, looks to be, as we'll see later, is Messmer's crest. And I do think that in that last shot where we were talking about the circle with the line, I think that was with the knight, who we weren't sure if it's a boss outside the golden door. I think that was probably Messmer's crest. You can see it here, and we'll see it in a shot a little bit more clearly, but this is the general shape, so this is obviously Messmer's zone. Lots of candles. I don't really think there's any more details to pull out of the background. But yeah, so this, yeah, let's bring this up again. Because you saw those impaling things and obviously Messmer's spear, but just look at the shape of this weapon, you know, the sort of, you know, it's like flames, but also kind of wood. It kind of reminds me a little bit of like the Damascus steel thing from Morgoth, even a little bit. But yeah, that shape right there, very similar to Messmer's weapon, I think. So, I guess here, this handle is going a different way, but there are some similarities there that, especially when you're talking about Messmer the Impaler, I think it's worth keeping in mind. Kind of a good shot of setting you on fire. You can see the little baldachin with Marika, the statue of Marika and the baby back there. It's a separate weapon from the shield. Because that kind of looks to me like the one weapon that the knight was holding. It kind of looks like the twin blade, like, I almost want to say like the Mikola and Malenia, like twin blade cut weapon. And here we get the aspect of the crucible, the wings, finally, that the player's using, which is sick. Very cool. Very similar shot to the gameplay trailer when you can see a Crucible Knight doing this. Very cool to finally get this in some form, whether it's like a special weapon art or what. Just curious. It almost looks like there's some sort of markings on the blade, which is interesting. There are definitely some sort of markings on the blade there. We gotta see the whole final shot again, because, you know, it's a good one.
I will not be far behind. May we meet again.
Shadow of the Erdtree. And it's interesting, you know, you have the Shadow of the Erdtree in a silver font instead of the gold. See, it sort of looks like roots sort of stuff. I don't think we really see anything actually. You still have the crumbling sort of motif, but with those extra bits of kind of what look like roots. This is a really interesting shot. Oh, I guess we'll let it play out. Oh, okay. So I think this is Mikola. This is sort of what we think. Mikola has quite an aura going on right there. And one thing I think is really interesting about the shot as Mikola is gesturing towards the tree is we don't see any of like the gold, lava, whatever, like oozing out of the tree. And we don't see, and you'd think you'd be able to see some baldachins in the shot, but we don't see baldachins in the shot. And I'm either thinking this has got to be something near the end of the DLC or the beginning of the DLC. I guess the end makes some more sense, but this seems like a state change of some kind. And you kind of see it before, but I do think it's kind of interesting, just the whole coloring of the tree here, like it's looking a little different, which is really interesting. It's still shedding off a lot of, I kind of think like ashy leaves or something, I'm not sure, but yeah, it's an interesting final shot though. I wouldn't be surprised if this is important in the DLC, but they can give a little sneaky non-context here, but I think that's maybe near the end of the DLC. Alright, so then we got this shot here with Messmer, and I think this is where we're going to get into a few comments, specifically around Messmer and just around this image, and some questions that I just want to tackle. So this first here is, well, you get a nice shot of like the DLC where you can see the buildings, some of the stuff we talked about. Interestingly, you see this big pillar that you see only very briefly, and it leads to one of the comments. But yeah, in the background of the Wicker Man shots, you can see the big pillar from the promotional material with Messmer on it. FromSoft seem to be trying to obscure it along with the entire east and north sides of the map from us. There's also probably going to be an underground area that we've only seen snippets of so far, and I agree with all that, because you do only see this column very briefly, and I'll actually go to that shot quickly. And so you can actually see in this shot right here is this, it still exists in this world, and you can sort of see what I was saying, this like jutty sort of landscape over here. It's a really brief shot though. This is over to the east, assuming the shadow of the Erdtree is north. And again, you can see that tower, this like column, pillar tower, and this really jagged landscape that we don't get much, you don't see much of in this trailer at all. You don't really see this direction too much, and in the main shots they've sort of looked away from it. And another thing actually I just remembered is you can sort of see here, this looks like a modern dragon, so not the ancient dragons, but the modern kin, like a Geel and such, sticking out, which is just an interesting detail. This Wicker Man is just chock full of goodness. So back over here, so yeah, that's this, but you don't see that craggy landscape. Like there's still been some artistic decisions made here for whatever reason. I do think that there's plenty that they're not showing us, actually. But so that was a good observation. Another comment is that Marika slutted around with a dragon resulting in Messmer. The only impaler I can think of, Vlad, was also called Son of the Dragon. Maybe there's a greater reason that the Greater Will has a dragon-like form, and it's a good comment, and a comment I've heard elsewhere. You know, Vlad the Impaler being Son of the Dragon, and Messmer the Impaler perhaps being a reference to that. We know that Miyazaki and From Software do put importance in names and sort of what it's referencing, and considering Vlad the Impaler, sort of the basis for Dracula, is such a famous historical figure, doing Messmer the Impaler seems like it's worth considering the real-life historical context or connotations that could be bringing in. Son of the Dragon, obviously, because we talk about Messmer as you see the draconic eyes, looks very much like a dragoon, has the snakes, and we're thinking dragon communion and stuff like that, but also, what if Messmer's just part dragon or something? We know the ancient dragons could take human form, so that has some interesting implications for Messmer and potentially his lineage as well. So it's just worth keeping in mind. Maybe Messmer Phase 3 is a dragon. The next comment, Messmer the Impaler, probably because he's the one who impaled Marika with the red stake through her womb. And I have some thoughts about this. I've heard this come up a few times. I think there's no reason to shut down this theory. I just don't subscribe to it that much, and I'll tell you why. So, when Marika and Radagon were struggling and they finally shattered the Elden Ring, that's when Marika was punished by the Greater Will. I want to say by the Greater Will because I do think we see the grab attack with the Elden Beast that does something similar, and I really think it was the Elden Beast who did that. But so that all would have happened after shattering the Elden Ring. Messmer shouldn't be anywhere in the Lands Between at that point. And considering how Radagon closed up the Erdtree, nobody should be able to get in there. I think it had to be the Elden Beast in there. Messmer, I get it with the Impaler, but also if he's going to be known as Messmer the Impaler, nobody really knows what happened to Marika in there because nobody can get in there. Like Morgott said, nobody can get into the Erdtree. They don't really know what happened in there. So Messmer wouldn't be known as impaling Marika after the Elden Ring shattered, not only because Messmer is seemingly in the Land of Shadow for a long time now, but also can't get in there. And if Messmer could get in there, nobody really knows that Marika's been impaled like that. None of that's really known information by most people. So it'd be hard for him to get a nickname for that act alone. Not to say that there couldn't be a scenario in which that is the case somehow. I won't rule it out, but I just don't think it's likely based off of what we currently know. And another question is, let's see. Nice words, thank you very much. How do you think the DLC will be released, and as in digital release only or physical too? We'll cover that. And if a few enemies will change locations for us to find an item required to actually enter the DLC. As we discussed, it seems like there's at least some NPCs or an NPC who is outside of the DLC who will be part of it. And I can see some minor stuff like that. I don't know if it'll just require beating Radon and beating Moog, then you get access, or if you'll get an item as a result of that to be like a flag to get you into the DLC. But I can see them doing some minor stuff, even with Bloodborne, there was, they added an NPC outside. They'll definitely do a patch update before the DLC, because that has to account for people who don't have the DLC. And I think part of that will be bringing in at least a new NPC into the Lands Between, not the DLC map. As for the additions, I did want to bring up something quickly. You saw a little sneak peek here. So, you have the Collector's Edition. And I do want to note that the base game is not included in the Collector's Edition, which I think is silly bananas, and it's an expansion code. So you get the art book and the statue and stuff, but you don't get the base game. You don't get... I just think it's a little bit of weird. You don't get the base game. You don't get this version of the game as part of it. And even this Shadow of the Erdtree edition, which I personally think this cover, I wish maybe they had done some new cover art, or at least, I don't know, I think this is arguably uglier than the base game because it's just got this little stuff added on. But, so the includes expansion, Shadow of the Erdtree voucher code included, so they're not even they're not doing a new disc for this Shadow of the Erdtree edition. They're just, you can download the DLC with a code they include in here. Which, I wish that they would press a new disc or something for it, just to have it all be one thing, but... And I think it's silly that they're not including the Shadow of the Erdtree edition in here. I think they're imagining that most people getting this edition already have it, but, I mean, if you don't own Elden Ring and you decided now's the time to go all in, you would have to get this and a digital version or this edition to actually be able to play it, which I just think is very silly. So, but going back to this, yeah, there's not too much left at this point of the trailer. You got this. You got your bonus in-game gesture. I love how they just use this guy for all of it. You got this more close-up shot of the Shadow of the Erdtree. The landscape's generally obscured, but this looks to be the same area in the background where we saw the Boar Knight. So, and June 21st, 2024. So, there we go. We've looked through the trailer, y'all. It's, whew. I didn't expect it to be so many episodes. But, that was a lot of fun. I'll have to figure out something to do next. I have lots of thoughts still, but, It's fun doing the wait, and this has wrapped up this one, and this will be a chunky video, I think. So, but thanks for coming along. Please feel free to put in more comments and thoughts about what we discussed today, and I will try and cover that in a future Elden Wait video. But yeah, thanks for following along with me. If you want to continue to follow along on the Elden Wait journey, please subscribe to the Lore Hunter and turn on notifications. I've gotten lots of kind comments about people saying, you know, they're so excited to see the way back, and it's been a fun routine, and it was a fun routine for me as well, and I'm happy to be doing this, and it's been a lot of fun, and it's just a way to get to the wait. And you know, also let me know, like, if people, how do I say this? I have noticed too that there's a lot of people who said, like, oh, where'd you go after Elden Ring came out? I was making content, but I was also making more traditional lore content, and not to get into much of the back end of like YouTube creator stuff, because I'm very open to the format of videos I do, and it just made more sense for me to move to a more traditional model, I thought, when the game came out. But also, you have the big dogs. You got Vadi, you got Smotown, you got a lot of cool people doing the cool lore stuff. You got Vadi's very cinematic stuff, Smo doing very robust, thorough videos, also with some very nice shots and very nice presentation. I also sort of went into the same thing, but, you know, I'm happy to keep this party rolling. Like, so just, you know, if you have thoughts about sort of what you come to the Lore Hunter channel for, because I've seen a lot of people really, and I really felt a nice personal connection to this series, and it's the party doesn't necessarily have to end when the game comes out, is what I'm saying. I'm happy to return to more traditional content, but also, you know, if you have thoughts, just let me know, because I really like the community that rises up around this, and sort of the routine, and sort of, it's a very peaceful series to do, and I hope y'all enjoy it. So I've rambled on far too long now, but anyways, as always, thanks for watching.